Good evening, everyone. Welcome to an evening with our favorite monk, Bhakti Sudaso, who will be teaching about renunciation tonight, nekkhamma. And welcome to Adriana, James, good to see you, Gabriella, Ethan, Priyakant, lovely to see you all. So we will be starting. Oh, Gabriella says, I hope everyone has had a chance to smile today.
Oh, that's very sweet.
Yes, we all did. Very good. It was a lovely sunny day in here in New Jersey, so it was quite nice. And hello, welcome to Julia and to all the invisible friends that are watching. Welcome to you as well. So as usual, we will be starting with the Ratana Sutta, and there is a link in the live chat if you'd like to chant along. All right, and Pati will lead us in the chanting.
Okay. So all together. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Yani bhutani samagatani bummani vayani va antaleke sabe bhuta sumana bhavantu atopi saka chasunantu pasitam tasmahi bhutani sameta sabe metam kabrota manusiya pataya Devacharato chaharanti ye baling tasmahine rakata apamata yan kinchi vitang yadavahuram vasage suvayam ratanang panitam nano samangati tathagatena idampi buddhe ratanang panitam Etena sacena subhati hotu Kayam viradam amatang panitang Yadad jagasa kyamuni samahito Nadena dhammena samati kinchi Idampi dhamme ratanang panitam Etena sacena subhati hotu Yang Buddha seto parivannai suching samadhimanantarikannya mahu samadhinatena samo navijjati dampi dhamme ratanang panitam etena sacena subhati hotu Ye pungala tasatang pasata chatari etani yugani honti te dakineya sugata sasavaka ete sudinnani mahapalani idampi sanghe ratanang panitang etena sacena subhati hotu Ye sopayota manasa dalhena nekamino gotamasa sanamhi Te patipata matang vigaiha lantha mudhanim buddhim punjamana Vidampi sanghe ratanang panitang etena sacena subhati hotu Yatinda kilo pataving sito siya chatum vivade via sampakampiyo Tatupamang samburisang madami o arya sachani avechapasati Idampi sanghe ratanang panitang etena sacena subhati hotu Ye arya sachani vibhavayanti gampira panyena sudesitani คินชาพิเทหนทิพุสาปมาตาละเทบวังอาธมังอาดิยันติอิดัมปิสังเครัตนังปะหิตังเยเทนะสัจเจนะสุวัติโหตุสหาวาสดาสนะสัมปดายาตยาสุธัมมาจหิตาภวันติสากายเดทิวิจิกิจิตัญชาสีลัมปะตังวาปิยดาติกินชีจตุหภาเยหิชเวปโมโตชะชาภิธานานิอภัมโมคาตุงอิดัมปิสังเขรัตนังปณิตังเอเทนะสัจเจนะสุวัติโหตุคินชาปิโสกัมมังคโรติปาปะกังกายเยนะวาจาอุดเจตสามาอบัมโบโสทาสัพพทิชฌาดายาบัมปทาเดตปดาสมุตตาอิดัมปิสังเครัตนังปณิตังเอเทนะสัจเจนะสุวัติโหตุวนาคบุมเมยทาภูสิตังเกเกมมานามาเสปัตมัสมิงเกมเฮทัตุปมังธัมมวรังอเดสัยนิมบานากามิงปารมังนิทายาอิดัมปิบุญเทรัตนังปณิตังเอเทนะสัจเจนะสุวัติโหตุวโรวรัญโยวรโดวราหโรอนุตตโรธัมมวรังอเดสัยอิดัมปิบุญเทรัตนังปณิตังเอเทนะสัจเจนะสุวัติโหตุขีนังพุรานังนวังนัตติสัมภวังเวรัตเจตายติเกภวัสมิงเทขีนาบิชาวิรุลินชันดานิบันติธิรายตายังปริโปอิดัมปิสังเครัตนังปณิตังเอเทนะสัจเจนะสุวัติโหตุยานิทัพพุทานิสมากทานิบุมมานิวายานิวันตะเลเกตถาคตังเดวมนุสปุจิตังบุตตังนามัสสามสุวัติโหตุยานิทัพพุทานิสมากทานิบุมมานิวายานิวันตะเลเกตถาคตังเดวมนุสปุจิตังธัมมังนามัสสามสุวัติโหตุยานิทัพพุทานิสมากทานิบุมมานิวายานิวันตะเลเกตถาคตังเดวมนุสปุจิตังสังฆังนามัสสามสุวัติโหตุเอเทนะสัจวัญเจนะดุขาอุปสัมเมนตุเตเอเทนะสัจวัญเจนะบยาอุปสัมเมนตุเตเอเทนะสัจวัญเจนะโรกาอุปสัมเมนตุเตAll right, so now we'll do some meditation practice. So please get in a meditation posture. And taking a few deep breaths to settle the body and mind. Dropping all the day's activities, all the thinking and planning, all the doing and moving, everything that we've been engaged with throughout the day. For the next few minutes, none of it matters. It's all completely irrelevant. So we just let it fade into the background. All things which can wait. So letting go of all the things we want to think about, letting go of all the things we want to plan, letting go of all the things we want to remember, and letting the mind be peaceful, letting the mind be silent. Letting the mind be still. And really appreciating the peaceful mind, delighting in the peaceful mind, the mind which needs nothing, which wants nothing, which pursues nothing. Delighting in a peaceful mind, a still mind, a contented mind. And filling that silence with alertness, with awareness, pervading the whole domain of the mind with bright, alert awareness. not fixating on anything, yet not ignoring anything. Like attentively watching sand slipping through our fingers. In the same way, we attentively watch as moments slip through the mind. Making sure the body is relaxed, the face is relaxed, that we're not holding on to tension anywhere in the body or anywhere in the mind, but rather that we're just letting sensation flow smoothly through attention without sticking, without catching, just knowing and letting go. watching each moment with gentleness. You can relax your posture, gently removing your legs from the full lotus position.
All right, thank you, Bante, for guiding us in meditation. And welcome to some new friends who have joined in. Hello, Jens, Elaine, Jessica, it's good to see you. Hello, Geeta, Liz, Lilia, Richard, Bradley, James, and lots of thank yous for meditation. And welcome to also Mark and Einat. All right. I'll pass it on to Bante. Oh, welcome to also Jacqueline.
Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhang dhammang sanghang namassami. Good evening, friends. Today we are on the third day of our sequence of the 10 parami. And today the topic is nekkhamma, which means renunciation. This is the standard definition that one finds, a standard translation of this word, renunciation. And that's quite a good translation, so I don't see much need to go too deeply into etymology or variant translations. I think renunciation is perfectly fine. And renunciation, this is a very important topic because in a very real sense, renunciation is the heart of Buddhist practice. In a very real sense, renunciation runs through everything in Buddhism from beginning to end. And in fact, there's a few places in the suttas where people ask the Buddha to summarize Buddhism for them, to summarize Buddhist practice. And the Buddha answered very simply, don't cling to anything. In other words, let go of everything, renounce everything. So if I was feeling particularly zen, I would end the talk right there. But I have a feeling that Ayasoma would disapprove. She's probably expecting me to talk for at least another 15 minutes or so. So I'm going to keep talking, even though I already finished the talk just now. So renunciation. Renunciation, once again, it's sometimes thought of as just being something that monastics do, and that if you're a lay Buddhist, you don't need to worry about it. But this is not a correct understanding, because since renunciation is right at the heart of the Buddhist teachings, renunciation is the core of Buddhist practice, then whether you're a monastic or a lay person, it's important to incorporate renunciation into your life to one extent or another. And there's a number of ways of doing this, and there's some very good reasons for doing this. First off, remembering that the source of dukkha is craving and attachment. Renunciation directly counters those tendencies. It's directly opposed to craving and attachment. So it helps to sever our dukkha. Renunciation also helps us to build up contentment, appreciation, and gratitude, all of which is a direct support to our happiness, to our sense of joy and satisfaction in life. So renunciation is not something to be scared of. It's not something to shy away from or to be worried about, because you're not losing anything. I just renounced some pollen from my nose. So with renunciation, you're not losing anything. What you're doing is you're getting in touch with a deeper, unconditional happiness. So I've encountered a lot of lay practitioners who are quite scared of renunciation. They're quite uncomfortable, even at the sound of the word makes them uncomfortable. And this is coming from the delusion that attaching to things is happiness, that attachment to things brings us pleasure and joy, and that therefore renunciation means giving up our happiness, giving up our joy. So this was, for example, how my brother reacted when I decided I wanted to be a monk. He was quite baffled. He was like, why would you give up on happiness? Why would you throw away pleasure and happiness? Why would you do that? And of course, that wasn't my intention at all. And it's not what renunciation is about at all. Renunciation is not about throwing away happiness. It's not about throwing away pleasure. It's about finding a higher happiness, finding a more peaceful pleasure. So the Buddha describes renunciation as giving up a lesser happiness to achieve a higher happiness. This is renunciation. So monastic life is, of course, all about renunciation. We give up haircuts, for example. Well, some of us do. Ayasoma's pretty attached to her hair, so she doesn't shave it terribly often. But I shave my hair every 3 days or so. So we give up hair. We give up clothing choice. We wear pretty much the same thing every day, which is actually a real blessing in disguise. Are you invited to a wedding? Well, then you wear the brown robes. Are you invited to a funeral? You wear the brown robes. Are you invited to a garden party? Well, you probably wouldn't go, but if you did, you would wear the brown robes. Are you invited to have tea with the Queen of England, which I know a monk, Ajahn Amaro, had tea with the Queen of England? You wear the brown robes. Are you going outside to turn the compost pile? You wear the brown robes. It's great. Renouncing clothing choice, so much happiness, so much happiness. There's this monk in Thailand, Ajahn Ganha. He's very famous. And basically, when he gives Dhamma talks, it's a little predictable because every other sentence is so much happiness. So he'll be like, when you practice the Buddha's teachings, so much happiness. When you give up the lesser things, so much happiness. When you practice morality, so much happiness. Repeat over and over again. It was a lot of fun. He would also periodically throw snacks at people, and every now and then he would hit people with a stick while saying so much happiness. But gentle hitting, not like beating someone, just like a little love tap with this long stick while saying so much happiness. Anyway, so renunciation is so much happiness. So it's recognizing that giving up these things, giving up hairstyles and fashion, it actually brings a tremendous amount of happiness and joy because we just don't need to think about these things. We don't need to worry about these things. It doesn't matter anymore. It never did matter. We were pretending it mattered before. But by giving them up, we realized that they actually never did matter. We give up a lot of the autonomy that we have. A lot of the choices that lay people think that make them happy. So, for example, we at this monastery we don't eat in the evening. Big deal. I haven't eaten dinner in years, and somehow I'm still happy. It's amazing how that works. In fact, it's great because once you're done with lunch, you just don't have to think about food for the rest of the day. It's not an issue at all. You just don't have to think about it. It simplifies life dramatically. We give up sexual relationships, which I have to say is another blessing in disguise. This is one of the elements of monastic life, which a lot of lay people just really don't quite click with. They're like, I like sex. You guys don't have sex. That doesn't sound like such a good deal. And But then you actually look at a sexual relationship and you realize that, yeah, there is some pleasure to it. There's no doubt about that. But there's also a tremendous amount of dukkha. There's a tremendous amount of hassle, discomfort, stress, anxiety, expectation, agitation. There's a huge amount of discomfort that's involved. And of course, we like to ignore all of the discomfort and just focus on the pleasure because we're delusional. But when you look at the whole picture, when you look at both the gratification and the drawback, then it becomes pretty clear that it's not all sunshine and roses. So we give up sexual relationships and we discover the happiness that comes from not being involved in such things. So this is all in the domain of monastic life, of course. We also give up other things like entertainment, and we discover the happiness of a quiet mind, the happiness of a peaceful mind, a mind that's not all stirred up with songs echoing in the head, songs bouncing around in our thoughts. That's not all wrapped up with what this character did to that character in episode 23 of Game of Thrones. I don't even know if there's 23 episodes. I just assume there's a lot since everyone's obsessed with it. So I'm assuming there's at least 23 episodes. I've never seen even one episode of it, so I wouldn't know. You just don't have that stuff in your mind. So the mind is naturally much more peaceful. It's much more quiet. It's a much more pleasant place to be. So these are all forms of monastic renunciation. And as a layperson, you might not be particularly interested in most of these things, and that's understandable. So there's other ways of practicing renunciation, simple ways. One of the simple ways is to practice renunciation once a week, or once a month even. So on the Uposatha days, the lunar quarters, or if that's too much, the full moon, then you can practice living like a monastic for one day. Wear simple clothing. Don't have food after noon. Don't do anything sexual. Don't engage in any entertainment of any sort. So practicing a bit of renunciation and developing contentment. Or when you find yourself really wanting something, ask yourself, do I really need it or do I just want it? And if you find that you don't really need it, then try going without. Try being content with what you already have. In fact, you can think about the things that you already have and cultivate an appreciation for them. It's like, oh, I have clothing to wear. That's great. Rather than, yeah, but I really want that new thing that came out from Versace. Oh my God, so hot. Instead, it's like, yeah, but I don't need it. I already have enough clothes. I don't need more things. It's like, oh, that's nice. You can also be grateful for what you have. So this is especially applicable in monastic life, where everything that we have is donations. It's either given to us directly, or it's comes from monastery funds, so funds that were donated to support us. So everything that we have is a gift. So we can be grateful for what we have. And when you're grateful for what you have and you appreciate what you have and you're content with what you have, then you don't need more things. And you find happiness in not needing things, not wanting things. Another element of renunciation is looking at our lives for what's excess, for what's extra, for what's unnecessary, and cutting it away. What is the unnecessary extra stuff that we're piling in our lives? So it might be physical things. There was one person I knew who, when he came to the monastery to become a monastic, he came with a U-Haul truck full of stuff. And I was just blown away. I was like, dude, that U-Haul truck is bigger than your cabin. Like literally, like the U-Haul truck was bigger than the monk's cabin he was assigned to. I was like, there's no way you could fit all that stuff in your cabin. And even if you could, then you wouldn't be able to get in the door. You would have to sleep on the porch. And it doesn't have a porch, so that's going to be a problem. So that's an example of how accumulating and gathering and being attached to a bunch of stuff just gets ridiculous. This person, by the way, didn't last very long in the monastery and left before too long. I don't remember what he did with that U-Haul full of stuff. Like, what did he do with this huge moving truck full of stuff? I have no idea. Like, did he just pile it up outside his cabin? I don't know. Anyway, he didn't last, so I never found out what he did with all those things. Another person who came and said they wanted to be a monastic, but they have a huge storage container somewhere, which was packed full of all kinds of stuff. And I was like, well, then just get rid of it. You can actually do these auctions, these blind auctions where you auction off a storage container. And people will just buy it and just get whatever is in there. And it's a surprise. You never know what's in these storage containers. It's like, well, you could just do that. Problem solved, just like that. You clearly don't need any of those things because you don't have them with you. But this particular person was completely opposed to the idea and rejected it and eventually decided that they didn't want to be a monastic after all. So renunciation of physical things, looking at all the physical things in our lives and asking ourselves, what do I really need? And more importantly, what do I not need and can therefore get rid of? So I used to have a policy of if I have anything which I haven't used for at least 6 months, then I get rid of it. Because clearly I don't really need it. If I haven't used something in a few months, well, clearly it's not of much use to me. Of course, the one exception is things like winter accessories. But that's to be understood. But even then, looking at what I have and thinking, well, do I have more than I really need? And if so, I trim off whatever's extra, whatever's unnecessary. So keeping things down to the bare essentials, keeping things to the minimum. And being honest with ourselves about what we really need versus what we're just clinging to. And then as we get rid of excess stuff, noticing the sense of relief that brings, the sense of freedom that brings, the sense of spaciousness, both in our mind and in our life, in our house and in our heart. And also practicing the same thing with our mental objects. So with our thoughts and our emotions and our memories, going through that and looking, well, what am I holding on to? What thoughts do I cling to, which I don't need to cling to? What memories do I keep dredging up and trying to relive when I could let them fade away? What emotions do I keep rolling around in and fortifying when I could let them fade, when they're not needed? And once again, noticing the serenity that comes when we let go of what's not needed. The peacefulness, the joy that fills the mind when we let all the other things drop out. Feels lovely, doesn't it? So the Buddha calls this nekkhamma sukha, the pleasure of renunciation, the happiness of renunciation. So, with practicing renunciation, it's usually good to start small. Start with small things and build up. Some people are able to make sudden big shifts where they suddenly drop a lot of things all at once. But for most people, that's too difficult. They start small, start with small things, letting go of small things and building up from there. And so as we get through physical things and through mental things, then we start to get to the things that are really hard to let go of, the things that are really hard to renounce. Our viewpoints, our opinions, things that we love to cling tightly to, even though it hurts us. We cling so tightly to them. But the Buddha said that we should practice being willing to let go of our opinions, to relinquish them easily. And noticing again how joyful and spacious the mind becomes. When we drop our viewpoints and opinions, then the mind is actually able to see reality as it is, to meet reality on its own terms. The mind also becomes as free as a bird. It's not held down or restricted in any way. So this sense of lightness and ease fills the mind when we're willing to let go of our viewpoints and opinions. When we're willing to say, maybe you're right, and really mean it. And of course, ultimately, we need to let go of everything that we think of as me and mine. We need to let go of the characteristics of our personality, of our self-identity, of who we think we are. And this is why I say that renunciation is right at the core of Buddhist practice, because in Buddhist practice, we're aiming at the highest, most profound, most intimate form of renunciation, which is renouncing our self-identity, renouncing our sense of me. The Buddha said, monks, abandon that which is not yours. And what is not yours? The body is not yours. Feeling is not yours. Recognition is not yours. Mental objects are not yours. Consciousness is not yours. Abandon these. Abandon them. Let go of them. So this is the highest form of renunciation. But if we haven't practiced the lesser forms of renunciation, it's very difficult to let go of self, to let go of me, to let go of who I think I am, to let go of my personality traits, my identity. It's very difficult to let go of that. If we're still clinging tightly to our hair and our Chanel bag, then it's going to be terribly difficult to let go of our self-identity. So we start with the small things and we build up to the big things. And finally, we let go of the biggest thing of all, the most dangerous thing of all, which is our self-identity. So the practice of renunciation leads all the way to full enlightenment. It's not something to set aside. It's not something to say is just for the monks. It's something to start to ask ourselves, how can I incorporate this into my life? How can I live more simply? How can I let go of some of the things that are cluttering my home, cluttering my heart, cluttering my mind? How can I let go of some of these things? And just do it. It's amazing how easy it is. It's only difficult because we think it's difficult. But to actually let go is easy. Just let go. You open up your closet and you start putting stuff in bags and boxes, and then it's gone. You put it out for charity, or if it's junk, you put it out for trash. It's gone. It's like, oh, that wasn't too hard. I can do this. You look at your mind and you see all the junk in your mind and you just drop it. You stop perpetuating it. And it disappears. And we're like, oh, that was easy. All this time I've been trying to force my mind to be silent and peaceful, but all I had to do was just stop fueling the junk that was in there. That wasn't so hard after all. I can do this. And it's the same with our opinions, our viewpoints. And ultimately, it's the same with our sense of self, our self-identity, who we think we are. We look at it and we realize, oh, I can let go of this. I don't need to hold on to this anymore. I never did need to hold on to it. And through all of this, so from the beginning to the end, the practice of renunciation is characterized by contentment, by happiness, by freedom, by spaciousness, by joy. So we're not losing anything by practicing renunciation. We're not losing anything except our dukkha. So there's nothing to be afraid of. So these are a few words on renunciation. So I hope that this has been helpful to you. And if you have any questions, please type them in and I'll answer them as best I can.
Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Thank you, Bante. And our friend Christina is asking, when practicing renunciation for a day, can you read books?
Well, optimally, you would only read Buddhist books and not other things. But as I said earlier, you can also do renunciation step by step. So if normally you spend all day binge watching TV, then not watching any TV and instead reading novels would be a form of renunciation. So maybe you could do that, and then maybe in a while you can try renouncing novels as well. And on your renunciation day, you only read Buddhist books. You only read Dharma books. So you can do these things step by step. You don't necessarily need to go directly to the maximum, but just try to step up bit by bit over time. That's fine too.
Thank you. And Gabriella actually had a question at the very beginning. Letting go of involvement with thinking, emotions, worries, identifications, preoccupations, and attachment is hard. How can we incline the mind to the mental aspects of renunciation?
Well, first off, start with the physical aspects of renunciation. This really helps. So this is one of the tendencies that I've noticed in a lot of Western convert Buddhists, myself included, by the way, is this tendency to try to skip over the first step and go directly to step 2. And that doesn't work terribly well. So step 1 is practicing physical renunciation. Get some proficiency in that area, and then step 2 gets easier. It's not as challenging. That's the first thing that comes to mind.
And her second question is, in Anguttara Nikaya 4.184, talks about how renunciation rids all fears and anxiety. How do we use renunciation to get rid of fear?
Well, because if you don't need anything, then you have nothing to be afraid of losing. Yeah, it's just amazing. I remember one time I was at the monastery and I had the thought, oh, somebody could just walk into my kuti. They could walk into my cabin and just take anything in there. And I was like, yeah, but I don't have anything that's worth stealing. They would walk into my cabin and they would just be like, what am I going to take? The picture of Bhikkhu Bodhi? That's what I'm going to take? What am I going to take? This little dinky Buddha statue? What am I going to take? This blanket? Like, there's nothing to take. So there's nothing to be afraid of. And even if they wanted to take my picture of Bhikkhu Bodhi and my blanket, well, fine, I guess. I can live without these things. I can probably get another blanket for one thing. It's not a big deal. Don't need to worry about it so much or at all. Yes, there's no fear there. And then with mental things, also, I know a lot of people who, as they get older and they start to lose their memory, there's this desperate fear that they're going to forget their cherished, beloved memories. And it's quite valid because you are, in fact, going to lose your memories. But that's not a problem if you've already practiced letting go. If you already have the heart of renunciation, then you've already made peace with losing everything. Losing your memories, losing your thoughts, losing your faculties even, losing your ability to think clearly. You can be okay with these things. So I saw this with my father. As my father got towards the end of his life, his ability to think rationally dropped dramatically. And this was a major cause of suffering for him because he had always identified very strongly with his logic, with his rationality, with his ability to think about things. So he had to come to grips with the fact that he just couldn't hold on to that anymore. And this was a real struggle for him. It was a big struggle for him. But if we've already made peace with that, then when the day comes, we won't be bothered. So this is why renunciation leads to freedom from fear, because if you're willing to let go of everything, then you don't need to be afraid of losing anything. Okay?
And there are some amusing comments on the, or reactions more likely, on the robes and clothing segment. Marielle says, the brown robes are pretty stylish though. That's right, they never go out of style. So in fashion since 2,500 years ago.
Yeah, so there's one monk I know, he's been a monk for 20, 30 years at this point. I don't remember exactly how many. But he said about every 5 or 6 years, this color comes back in style. And like, that's the perfect time because that's when he can get all the like sweatshirts and jackets that he's been needing for the past 5 years. And it goes out of style again and he has to wait another 5 years. But it was interesting because he'd been a monk long enough that he started to notice the trends in fashion, like and how many years between when monk colors were in fashion and when they weren't. Sorry, what was her question? I think I just got off topic. Oh, okay.
And Bradley is sharing a quote from the Suttas. As long as they live, the perfected ones avoid dancing, singing, music, and seeing shows, and beautifying and adorning themselves with garlands, fragrance, and makeup. I, too, for this day and night, will avoid dancing, singing, music, and seeing shows, and beautifying and adorning myself with garlands, fragrance, and makeup.
Yeah, that's from one of the Uposatha Suttas, where the Buddha basically says that to take the 8 precepts for a day is to live like an enlightened being for a day.
Thank you for sharing the kuttas, as I call them,
The
the sutta
kuttas.
sutta quotes. My dyslexia turns it into kuttas.
This could be a neologism.
Yeah.
In 100 years, this might be an official English word. Kutta means a quote from the suttas.
Made by ISO Mom. Maria says, can I love myself while renouncing that I'm not a self? Just like I take care of laptop I own, is it something like that? Or perhaps it's better to love oneself as an ever-changing thing, knowing that we won't love the same being twice?
Well, if you love everyone, then there's no problem because that automatically includes you no matter what you are in any given moment. The problem comes when we love only a specific version of ourselves. That's when there's a problem. But if you're willing to love every version of yourself, then that's actually the same as loving everyone. Because at one point or another, you've been everyone. Okay.
And Key asks a question. I used to study non-Buddhist yoga and still have lots of books. Is it okay to give them away, or is it that like practicing wrong speech or spreading false Dhamma?
If you give them to somebody who already is deeply immersed in and committed to Hindu practice, that's fine. But otherwise, I wouldn't recommend it.
Yes, should I just throw them away?
That's a bit more complex of an issue. So you have to follow your own conscience on that one.
Well, he says I feel bad throwing them away, so I still keep them. There we go.
Well, what I would recommend then is donate them to a library. Yeah. Because these practices, they do help a lot of people. They're not Buddhism, of course, but they are better than nothing. Okay.
All right. And James says, if that bigger body picture is sign that there will be issues. It's really cute that you had a picture of bigger body in your cutie. I'm making a lot of neologisms today. My dyslexia is out of control. In your cutie cootie. And Karen Ju asks, how do we get rid of emotions we roll around in? I love getting rid of things, but seem to hoard mental objects. Mm-hmm.
Well, it's good that you know where your hoarding tendency is. So one thing that really helps is to notice the discomfort that's caused by attachment to those things. So not getting caught up in the objects themselves, because then we'll just find ourselves fixating on the pleasantness of those objects, but rather the discomfort that the attachment to those objects brings us. That's one way of starting to break through that. It's not necessarily going to be easy, though, as I'm sure you've discovered. But you do the best you can. And when you catch yourself unwilling to let go of something, then you can also remind yourself, the Buddha praised letting go. I should try letting go. I have faith that the Buddha knew what he was talking about, so I'm going to try out his instructions and see what happens. So I'm going to allow this emotion to fade. So we don't need to get rid of it. We just need to allow it to fade. We need to allow it to go away on its own. So what we're cultivating is a mind of equanimity, a mind which is okay when the object is present and okay when it's not present. Okay when it's arising, okay when it's ceasing. A mind which is not disturbed by the coming or going of any phenomenon. That's what we're aiming at.
Oh, Gita also has pictures of Venerable Bhikkhu body, Venerable Bhante body. And Julia says, Bant, is there a good technique to break down those brain neuron connections and to release the feelings you get when you catch it? And just before you let it go, some are easier to break and will go away after you keep on catching them up, but some need more work.
Well, first off, I don't know what you mean by brain neuron connections. So I'm not a neurobiologist. I don't have anything to do with brains or neurons. So I'm interested in the mind, which is not a physical phenomenon and doesn't have anything to do with the brain. But yeah, it's quite normal that some things are going to be easy to let go of and others will be hard to let go of. That's to be expected. So the things that are hard to let go of are the ones where we have more attachment, where we have more personal investment, where we have a stronger sense of self, or a deeper addiction. So of course that's going to be more challenging. So that's where you need to make a strong effort to, again, pay attention to drawbacks, as I mentioned earlier. So drawbacks of attachment. Notice that whatever you're fixated on is impermanent, subject to change, not capable of bringing you true happiness and satisfaction. Also noticing that fixation on any mental object will prevent you from developing samadhi and inhibit the arising of wisdom. So when you recollect in this way, then it can remind us to let go. And also remembering that whatever you're fixating on is ultimately insignificant, unimportant, meaningless, valueless. It's like a child who finds a piece of trash in the yard and believes it to be a treasure. But an adult sees it and they just see it for what it is. It's just a little scrap of plastic, a little scrap of trash. There's nothing valuable there. There's nothing important. And eventually the child realizes that it's just a piece of trash and they throw it away. So that's what we're like. We're like the child who's found a piece of trash and we think it's something valuable. And we desperately cling to it. Until one day we realize that we've just been clinging to a piece of trash, not something valuable after all. So what we do then is we intentionally draw attention to the fact that that's all we're doing. We're just desperately clinging to something that's insignificant. And that this desperate clinging is just making us uncomfortable. Okay?
And Gabriella has a sutta request. Bhante, can we do the Tapussa Sutta? Anguttara Nikaya 941. I wrote it down.
Thank you.
And Adriana says, renunciation seems to almost be like a process of simplification. I think I might be actually complicating my practice in daily life. Yes, most likely. Overachiever, Adriana. That's not part of the question. She continues, I almost feel like this pressure need to remember in every moment everything I've learned. Like, okay, time for metta, but also contentment. Oh, and deep listening. And I feel like this might not be as helpful as I think.
Just relax. Yeah, just do one thing at a time. This is one of the greatest teachings that I got from my time at the Zen monasteries. Just do one thing at a time. And do that one thing with your whole mind, with all your attention, with all your mind. Just one thing. It's amazing what that does. Try it out. Do this practice all day long. Just do one thing at a time. Okay?
And Gabriella apparently is echoing Adriana's thought as well. They're both overachievers. They both need to relax, as Bhante says. And Julia says, I meant to let go of the way you react to specific situations, letting go of opinions.
Yeah, as far as letting go of opinions, one thing that's really useful to keep in mind is that we're delusional and our scope of knowledge is quite limited. So, however we think things are, it's almost certainly wrong. So, our perspectives are all cute and it's all well and good and makes a lot of sense from our extremely limited, distorted, and narrow viewpoint. But that doesn't mean they're right. In fact, they're almost certainly not right. So, we need to come to grips with that. And then you can still recognize that your opinions are there. You can recognize that those opinions exist, but you don't take them seriously. And you're willing to change them at a moment's notice. Whenever circumstances dictate that they need to be changed, then you can change them. This was something which used to frustrate my brother a lot. I used to, when I was younger, I would often have discussions and arguments with my brother about all kinds of different topics and subjects. And it would really frustrate him because we would be talking, and after a few minutes, I would change my stance on something. And he would get really annoyed. He'd be like, "What are you doing? You're expressing a different stance than you did a couple minutes ago." And I'm like, "Yeah, what's wrong with that?" But he found it really frustrating because it meant he had to constantly like shift his approach to deal with my changing stances and viewpoints. But from my perspective, it's like, well, of course, as you get more information and more perspectives, then your stance is going to change. Why wouldn't it? That's like the most natural thing in the world. The unnatural thing is to desperately stick to a certain stance regardless of what information comes in. That's what's weird. That's what's crazy. So yeah, of course we should be willing to constantly change our viewpoints and stances. And yes, we should not take them seriously at all. And we should recognize that our viewpoints and opinions and stances are always coming from limited, distorted information, which means they're almost certainly incorrect or flawed in some way. And that's okay, as long as we don't take them seriously. It's okay.
Bradley says it's actually horrifying the extent to which we'll go to defend our viewpoints.
Yeah, it's just mind-blowing.
It's not right. And Gabriela says it's very hard to relax. I will try harder to relax.
I think you're missing the point here.
And James says, yeah, relaxing is tough.
I know. It's I was telling Ayasoma this earlier. Basically, my entire life, people were always telling me to relax, and it never worked. I just didn't get it. I was like, relax? How do you relax? And they were like, just relax. And I was like, I don't know what that means. And at some point, I relaxed, and I was like, oh, wow, this is actually really nice. I should have done this years ago. Yeah, just stop doing anything. With body and mind, just stop doing anything. Let it all go soft.
Yes, I'm the same way. I can literally not relax.
I really think you guys need to come and stay at the monastery for a while.
Yeah, you're all great. Like overachievers, but that can be a very good quality.
Yeah, and every day I'll tell you to relax.
Until you actually relax. See, it at the very beginning, it used to irritate me a lot.
But and then now you relaxed.
I've relaxed. I was like, oh, okay, yeah, actually, it's kind of nice. All right, and that was that's all for this evening. We can all just relax. Thank you so much, Bante, for sharing the Dharma. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Oh, James says, may have missed this one. I am. Let me see. I might have. Oh, okay. One sutta, I wondered if Bante could do his Majjhima Nikaya 52, the man from Attakanagaram.
Yeah, we can do that.
Let me put it down. Oh, and we also have Gabriella says, I need the how to relax primer.
Well, basically, when you open it, the first page says relax. Then you turn to the second page and it says relax. Until eventually it sinks in and you relax.
Then there is just relax.
Yeah.
And Cam, hello Cam, good to see you online, asks, Bante, my brother and I almost never had a good conversation because we had opposing opinions on almost everything. He passed away many years ago. Had I let go of my opinions, I'd not live in regret. Oh.
Well, recognize that you didn't know any better at the time. You were immersed in defilements and delusions, which meant that you had a hard time relating to your brother. So forgive yourself. Just as if it was somebody else who came to you and told you this story, you would recognize, oh, well, that's too bad, but that's just because you were filled with delusions and defilements. Of course you made mistakes. And you would encourage that person not to hold it against themselves. In the same way, you need to forgive yourself. It's like, yes, I made mistakes in the past, which is why I'm practicing Buddhism so that I can stop making mistakes. I'm practicing Buddhism so that I can let go of my defilements and my delusions, and so that I can learn how to relate to others in a way that's based on wisdom and compassion. So the best way I can honor my brother's memory is by practicing Buddhism with sincerity and diligence, so that I can learn how to have a peaceful, nourishing conversation with others. Okay?
Oh, beautiful. And Bradley says, there is something painfully sweet about holding on to something, even though we know it's hurting us, like picking a scab.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. Yeah, there's no denying it. So what we can do then is pay attention to the joy of contentment, the joy of renunciation, the joy of peacefulness. And that turns our greed mind towards the path. By fixating on how wonderfully pleasant it is to practice renunciation, contentment, simplicity, serenity, peacefulness, relaxation, letting go. Okay.
Right. Okay, I think that's all for real this time. Thank you so much, Bante, again. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. And thank you all for joining us morning and evening, or afternoon and midday if you're in another part of the planet, to practice Dhamma. It's really lovely to always have this practice together. So we will be meeting in less than 12 hours as usual for Sutta study. And tomorrow the Sutta will be on transcending suffering, an evergreen, always pertinent, always useful. And then in the evening, we will continue with our Parami. I said it right. Parami special. And tomorrow we will be talking about wisdom with either Bhante Sudaso or Ayasoma, mystery monk appearing. You will only know by tuning in on BNN at 8 a.m. No, at 8 p.m. Well, tomorrow at 8 a.m. and okay, never mind.
Usual schedule. 8 a.m., 7:30 p.m.
James says this broadcast of BNN has been excellent. And Einat says, great talk, thank you, and good night to all. All right, thank you again. Have a great